Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is the Matt Murphy Show, halfway home this Friday edition. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you, whether you're joining us on the radio dial, 99.7 FM, all throughout Middle Tennessee, perhaps on Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, a variety of apps. If it's streaming anywhere, we're there. Just type in Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We have our own app. You can join us by going to your app store. And then, of course, there's Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and now Rumble. We joined Rumble earlier in the week. Type in 997 WTN, and you can find us on that platform. We appreciate you being with us and your participation in the show via the Super Text line. You have any questions for our next guest, Senator Bill Hagerty, get them in, and I'll get them to the Senator on the Super Text line, 615-737-9986. Speaking of, he is on our Murphy Show hotline, and we are pleased to be rejoined by the good Senator from the state of Tennessee, Bill Hagerty, on the show. Hello, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to be back with you, Matt, and I'm glad that your surgery has gone okay and you're back on the air. My best wishes for a speedy recovery there.
Well, you're very kind. I appreciate that. Just onward and upward. I got to 127 degrees during PT today. That's good, by the way, Bill. That's good. Wow. So I feel good about it.
Good.
Look, in my absence, the 2 weeks, man, I was champing or chomping, depending on how you say it, at the bit to get back on the radio because, man, oh, man, I mean, the summertime is not slowing the Trump administration down or the activity happening in the United States Senate either. Let's start with the BBB, which is now the BBL, the Big Beautiful Law. You know, I had concerns like, some conservative Americans about not maybe taking a big enough bite of the apple out of spending.
I totally get it.
And I know you've been asked this question plenty of times. I mean, obviously, on balance, the good far outweighed the negative. But talk to us about what it did accomplish, your concerns about that big bite we could take, and what is next for the Congress of the United States to continue deficit reduction.
Well, without putting our listeners to sleep today, I won't get too much into the protocols, but it's a complicated process moving these bills to the Senate, Matt. And of all the people I talk with, you understand the rules up there and know how arcane they can be. But what this bill did accomplish was deliver on the promises that President Trump made on the campaign trail. He'd been talking about extending the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Every Democrat voted to take that down and to increase taxes on Americans by north of $4 trillion. Let me just make that clear. Had that happened, had the Democrats gotten their way, the projections from the Council of Economic Advisors showed a negative 6% GDP decline in 2026. Can you imagine that? Cratering our economy, putting the U.S. in a recession that's so large that would impact the entire world economy. That's what they voted for. What we did was we extended and made permanent tax cuts that would, frankly, stimulate a lot of capital investment. We're going to see that happen again. It happened after the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was put in place. 2018, 2019, best years we've had in economic history. And this is an important point to get across, Matt. The Congressional Budget Office, the so-called scorekeeper up at the U.S. House and Senate, is practicing something along the spectrum of voodoo to malpractice. I mean, the stuff they come up with, they don't give any credit to the investment that's going to be stimulated. They give maximum credit to generating more tax revenues by raising taxes, not assuming that people would change their behavior and just work less or find ways to do it in a different manner to not be taxed, which is exactly what they do. So they're very tax biased, very tax revenue biased in that respect, but they're not growth biased. And in 2017, their calculations, Matt, missed the mark by well north of $1 trillion in terms of incremental, unaccounted for tax revenue that came in because of the growth that President Trump generated in the economy. That's how bad it is. So we want to see deficit improvement. I certainly do. I know you do too. We want to start curbing the deficit, start eating away at the debt. This is a growth-oriented bill that's going to put much faster growth than the Congressional Budget Office is accounted for. And there are a couple of other things that it misses. Again, the promises that President Trump made with respect to extending this, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, rebuilding the military, supporting our border patrol and supporting the resources there that are necessary to secure our nation again. All of that is very positive and critical. What he promised, he has delivered on that. Here's what else is going to happen. During the 4 years of the Biden administration, massive new regulations were put in place. You know that very well. They've quantified the impact of that regulatory onslaught that the American public suffered, and it quantifies out to north of $1 trillion per year of incremental compliance cost, regulatory burden, permitting cost you name it. The Bidens put in over $1 billion a year of extra costs that we didn't have before. Every department head, every agency head has been charged with going through their departments and coming up with ability to basically cut back, to take out the sclerosis and fix this regulatory overhang. So the deregulatory impact, not accounted for at all in these calculations. If you think about north of $1 trillion falling back to the bottom line of American companies and getting reinvested again, winding up in the pockets of employees again, stimulating economic growth. Again, this isn't accounted for at all in the numbers that the Congressional Budget Office puts forward and the numbers that are hawked on TV by the partisan media. So I want to leave you with this. I'm very optimistic that there's a lot more growth in this. In terms of cutting cost, we'll have more opportunities to do that. We'll probably have 2 more reconciliation bills, and we'll have the benefit of the work at DOGE. We'll have the benefit of more work coming out of these departments, figuring out how to restructure, realign these agencies, and really cut back on the spending. But it's tough with Democrats, and we got to get through this 60-vote threshold in the Senate. We can't get spending cuts done with a single Democrat vote.
It's amazing. It's amazing how much the Democrats have moved on things that most common sense Americans seem to agree on, like basic work requirements for able-bodied people for Medicaid. And you know, we played the clip from former President Bill Clinton where he outlined an approach that seems to be very similar to the Trump and Republican senatorial approach to Medicaid work requirements. And yet the Democrats are trying to use this as a talking point moving through 2026. How important is it to reiterate and to double and triple and quadruple down on the basic requirements and the fact that grandma and grandpa and pregnant moms, they're not getting kicked off of their Medicaid? Right.
Yeah, they're not touched. I think the problem that we've got right now isn't the substance of the bill, because when we pull the individual policies like the one that you just described, Matt, work requirements for Medicaid recipients, you know, that's something that was imposed during the pandemic era. The Biden administration kept expanding it. What they want is government dependency, Matt. They want to see maximum government dependency. That's become the new Democrat platform. The days of Bill Clinton are long gone. Mm-hmm. And what Republicans want to see are incentives for people to work. You think about the dignity that goes along with that. You think about the fact that if you get out of government dependency and get on the ladder to success, you can actually achieve the American dream. The Democrats would much rather, I think, at least the way they're voting, they'd rather see people trapped in dependency, not incentivize able-bodied people to get back to work, but make it easy for them not to work. That's not the America that our forefathers came to found. And if you think about kicking those people off the rolls, making a work requirement, if you don't work 80 hours in a month, Matt, come on, you probably work 80 hours in a week.
Sure.
If you don't work 80 hours in a month, you don't qualify for Medicaid benefits, assuming you're able-bodied, don't have dependents, and you're not over a certain age and you're not below a certain age. I mean, this is working age individuals, mostly men, and they shouldn't be getting free benefits, and we shouldn't be incentivizing that if they're capable of working.
There was a time, Senator, and not just in our lifetimes, but not so long ago, that we could put partisanship aside when a tragedy hit the United States of America like we saw in Texas. And sadly, some on the political left have seized on this, what they consider to be a political opportunity. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to this, because I think this goes well beyond, Democrats and Republicans. We look at our fellow Americans who are suffering because of a natural disaster there. And your hearts and your thoughts and your prayers, yes, go out to those folks. Is there anything more that we should be doing, and any thoughts that you have about some of the tragedy that's coming out of Texas?
Well, on the politicization front, it is very, very sad, and I hated to see it. I don't ascribe that intent to the majority of Democrats. I think this is there's a left wing group that just so possessed by politics and so deranged by President Trump's successes that they're going to do anything to try to blame any calamity on him or on the Republicans. But we clearly know that's not the case. In fact, we had doubled up all the resources down there from the National Weather Service because we could see this coming. The failure happened to be in the time of night. You can't control that. The camp counselors didn't get the message in time. They were asleep. It's tragic. It's unfortunate. But trying to lay blame and trying to politicize, it's very, very sad. I mean, you want to talk about politicization, look at what FEMA did when we wanted people taken care of up in Northeast Tennessee.
That's right.
In North Carolina, in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. You've got some mid-level bureaucrat telling people not to stop, not to help people with Trump signs in their yards. That's politicization in its worst, and that's getting cut out in Washington. But with respect to the folks in Texas, one of my good friends had two of his daughters at Camp Mystic. Thankfully, they survived, Matt. Thankfully, they survived. But what they saw will mark them for the rest of their lives. And I just feel so sorry for the families, the people that are grieving right now, the people that have been lost. Prayers are with them, but also those young people that saw this tragedy, and they're going to have to live with it for the rest of their lives too.
You're obviously a student of American history as well as a United States senator, and that kind of goes hand in hand. I have described the first 6 months of the Trump second term as the best second term that I can recall in American history, and I know that's saying a lot. But one of the biggest reasons that I would suggest that, not just some of the economic turnaround that we've seen, not just some of the domestic side policy turnaround that we've seen, but the master stroke that he has engaged in attempting to, accomplishing a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. In doing so, he struck at the heart of their nuclear program. And I want you to speak to that aspect of the Trump presidency and tell me if you would agree with this, Senator, because I did not believe that we had the ability to thread the needle in the manner that the president did. He struck down their nuclear ambitions and at the same time prevented any third parties or Iran itself from escalating the conflict that already existed in the Middle East. It was a master stroke.
Well, it definitely was a master stroke, and it's something that he had to do, frankly, Matt. You look at president after president saying we're not going to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon program. Well, President Trump made his red line clear. He made his timeline clear. You may recall he gave them 60 days to come to the table. On day 61, Israel moved in. And President Trump waited till the opportunity was right. He did something that the Israelis could not do, dropping the bunker bombs, and he did it in a way that was decisive. I did a television interview today, and the clips that are coming on are about whether it was decisive enough, whether enough was destroyed. Look, Matt, we know what the intent of the Iranian regime was. Why would they bury these facilities deep into the ground if they weren't trying to hide something? The Israelis have proven what they were trying to do. They're trying to weaponize enriched uranium. And what has happened is that President Trump has taken out any ability to enrich that remaining uranium any further. To the extent there is any uranium out there, they don't have the ability to weaponize it now because all those labs are destroyed. And people are talking about, well, did you buy yourself months or years? I think what he bought himself was credibility and demonstrated the resolve of the American people and the fact that we are not going to tolerate this anymore. And the Ayatollahs are going to have to come back to the table because if they don't, they're going to get the full force of the United States. He's already proven that he'll do it. He's done it in a very surgical manner. I think they see the writing on the wall. And, there's arguments over, speculation about if there's any type of material left and how quickly could they get back in business. I think President Trump sent them a pretty clear message that they shouldn't be doing that. So I think it's going to be threaded. He also knows how to impose maximum pressure on them. I was involved in the maximum pressure campaign in his last administration because as U.S. ambassador to Japan, my job was to go to the Japanese. They were very unhappy about my demands, but to get them to stop buying Iranian crude oil. They'd been doing that for 70 years. They reminded me they fought a world war over access to energy. But they ultimately agreed. They stopped buying Iranian crude oil. It happened all over the world. They were almost broke. President Trump was right at the point of having negotiation success with them, and people like John Kerry from the previous Obama administration who were tied up with the JCPOA kept pleading with the Iranians, just wait till the election, see if we can get into office. The Democrats did get into office. You know exactly what happened. They stopped enforcing the sanctions. Terror breaks out throughout the Middle East, and they run rampant with this program. Now President Trump has put it to an end. Thank God he did.
Senator, I know I have to get you out of here, but one more quick question, and it is on the front of transparency. So, I believe that the Trump administration is moving us toward an era of transparency with regard to agencies that do have to keep a lot of secrets, like the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Justice more broadly. But there's been a lot of concern and a lot of conversation about the Epstein files. Any thoughts from you, Senator, about this? And look, I understand that we have to put a certain level of trust in the Department of Justice, but a lot of my listeners are a little concerned because we feel like we got one story a few months ago. Now we're getting a bit of a different story. What is your take on this? Any words of wisdom?
Well, I think the words of wisdom may have come out of the Appropriations Committee yesterday as we put it to a vote. Those files need to be disclosed. I'm for doing that, and I don't know what kind of pressures that the Department of Justice is under, but I do think that if there's nothing to see, then they should make that clear. I don't think anybody fully believes that, and so if there are national security issues involved, they need to figure out how to deal with that. But the American public has been waiting to understand what took place there. A lot of mystery around this thing, and there may be heads of state, who knows, other foreign figures involved in it, who knows. But it's not my job to protect them. There's clearly foul play that's taken place here, and it's really created, more important than the specific case, Matt, it's feeding into this lack of trust that the American public has in our institutions.
Amen.
And whether it's the FBI and CIA, who I my hats off to John Ratcliffe, who's coming to run the CIA, just a Class A individual. He will straighten that place out. Kash Patel, what an amazing job he's doing at the FBI. He knows where the bodies are buried. He's going after them. It's been amazing to watch that. And Pam Bondi, super talented. We've got a great team there. The fact is, the American public has very good reason to have lost their confidence in these institutions, and these leaders need to bring it back. And President Trump is just the chief executive to get that to happen.
Always a pleasure to communicate with you. Always a great conversation. Thank you so much for keeping Middle Tennessee informed, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Have a great weekend.
All the best. Same to you.
All right, you too. That is Senator Bill Hagerty joining us for the better part of 16 minutes or so. It's 24 after the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.